Today for the wide toe box series, we have two heritage heavy hitters. One brand in Nicks being known for making some of the absolute toughest boots in the entire world for the last like 5 or 6 decades, but are also known for making the exact opposite of Barefoot boot because most of their stuff is really narrow, has really high arches, and they're really high heels. The other brand being Texarado, being the new kid on the block that started in 2023 and has exclusively been making ultra wide, heavy duty, wide toe box, true Barefoot style Barefoot boots. And a lot of people say they make the absolute highest quality Barefoot boots that money can buy. So we're gonna cut both these in half, run through all of our tests to really figure out, first of all, who makes the better Barefoot style boot, which is the better value, and which boot you might want. And we're gonna rank each of these as we go along in an overall ranking to see who reigns supreme in the wide toe box work boot world. So who are the contenders? Well, first is the brand is Nicks, the style is the Ridgeline. They weigh 1 pound 14 ounces. They retail for $495 and they're made in Spokane, Washington. And the way they position this product is built for the trail, tough as a P&W work boot. The Ridgeline Zero Drop blends zero drop comfort with unmatched durability, giving you natural stability, superior traction, and all-day support on any terrain. Crafted from thick, full-grain leather and heavy-duty stitch-down construction, it's resolable and built to last. A wide toe box allows natural movement, while the Vibram Outsole ensures firm grip on any surface. The next contender, the brand is Texarado. The style is the Bailey boot. They weigh 1 pound 8 ounces, so a little bit lighter than the Nicks. They retail for $399, so about $100 cheaper than the Nicks, and these are made in Leon, Mexico. And the way they position this product is named after our hometown, Bailey, Colorado. Our Bailey boot is an extremely versatile, well-rounded, active boot. A great chore boot capable of adventure. Bloodline restock. Most of our blood core products are restocking 100 pairs each. We've got Nicks in the Indy one in blood core for the first time ever. Got the Drifter 3s and the Smugs in blood core. And this is our exclusive leather that we did with Seidel. You have to earn the right to show that blood showing through. These drop on July 3rd, only 100 pairs each. So get on that limited edition email list so you can make sure you get as close to guaranteeing a pair as possible, especially for these, only 100 pairs, brand new drop. So check it out below, Bloodline restock, July 3rd. So first, looking at durability, which one of the biggest things is the leather. Nicks is known for making super heavy duty leather, super thick everything, and this leather is no exception. It's 3.1 millimeters thick. It's a lightly buffed surface where you get this kind of almost nubuck look to it, and it's flipped rough out in the vamp and heel and smooth out in the upper in the classic Pacific Northwest way because it's a little more abrasion resistant with the rough out down here. The Texarados, on the other hand, is still super thick, comes in at 3 millimeters. This is American bison leather, which is very durable as well because it comes from a bison, which is just like a steroid infused cow. And it has all this unique pebbling, which basically builds in pre-break points. So this leather's a lot easier to break in than this Nicks leather, like several times easier. It's a big difference between how flexible the bison leather is compared to the Ridgeline, but I think Nicks offers bison, so it could be an option. So what about the actual test? We did the burn test. Both of them performed pretty well. You know, obviously the grain is not going to be as fire resistant as the rough out down here, but both passed just fine because there's no plastic coatings. There's nothing really to complain about in terms of the burn test, aside from the rough out being a little bit more burn resistant. If we look at the puncture test, the Nicks did 156.5, the Texarados did 124.5, so both really good scores. And as for how this compares to all the other test results we've done in this series so far, here you go. And so which boot has the better leather? For me, they're on par. I think it's splitting hairs, so tie. But the leather's far from the only thing that makes boots durable. The construction matters a lot, and these are both really similar because your Nicks has your classic 360 stitch down construction where the upper is flared out and then stitched down, and on the Nicks it's sewn one layer all the way through the outsole, and you can see where I've worn it through a little bit with just the amount of wear that I had, and then it's double stitched in the toe and single stitched around the heel. Texarados, on the other hand, are one single layer of 360 stitch down construction, and it doesn't go all the way through, and there's pros and cons with each, but if you were to say which one's more durable, you'd probably give the edge to Nicks just from having that redundant stitching and the stitching that goes all the way through, even though we've already kind of worn through it. Those columns of thread are going to help prevent delamination more than not having stitches. And both these being super durable, comfort is also a huge aspect of any kind of wide toe box boot because that's usually why people are going towards that wide toe box Barefoot style. So let's look at the insole, the lining, the width, and the midsole. Starting with the inside and the lining first, the Nicks is classic Pacific Northwest, completely unlined in the quarters and then just lined in the vamp. The vamp is a 1.4 millimeter suede leather. So around your toe, you've got that 3 millimeters plus that 1.5, so you're up to 4.5 millimeters around your toes, which is gonna be really durable, but it will also be a little bit tougher to break in, especially this last not being quite as wide that we'll cover in a sec. Compare that to the Texarados, same thing, completely unlined up the shaft of the boot, but in the vamp, you've got a 1 millimeter lining that's a grain leather rather than a suede. So it's a little bit thinner, but it has the grain, looks like at least, or feels like. But they're so close in terms of quality and comfort. You know, it's hard hard to, it's kind of split in hairs. So let's look at the insole to see if we can split the difference there. The Nicks is just the full length veg tan insole. So you're standing on that really thick 5 to 6 millimeter, like rock hard insole, which has its pros and cons. You know, it breaks in the shape of your foot. It doesn't smell nearly as much as synthetics. It's extremely durable, making these really easy to resole. Compare that to the Texarados, and it has a removable insole. And just look how wide this thing is. So I just put this up to the entire boot of Nicks. Like, are you kidding me? This thing is so ridiculous. But the point is, it's a removable insole. It's leather topped and then has foam underneath. And then underneath the insole is the same thing. It's a big slab of veg tan leather, but we don't know how thick it is. We don't know how it compares, so we'll have to kind of fully wait to give judgment on that. But in terms of comfort, the Texarado is gonna be more comfortable because you have a removable insole. And to back that up, huge difference in the ball drop test, as you can see here. But what about the overall width? I kind of just covered that already. The Texarados are about as wide and anatomical and true wide toe box as anyone's ever made a traditional heritage boot. That's like wider than my hand. Like, I could wear these as gloves. But you compare this to the Nicks, and this is not a barefoot last. This is a semi-anatomical last is where I'd kind of put it, because the big toe's not very straight. It's not really made to be a barefoot last. It's designed after one of the most famous shoe shapes and boot shapes in the entire world, the Munson last, but it's not nearly as true anatomical as this. But then the midsole, which is another huge part of comfort, because it's what's absorbing the shock underneath your foot that separates you from the ground. The Nicks, once again, classic Pacific Northwest boot, where you've got that big slab of veg tan as the midsole and a little bit of a rubber midsole to help that outsole bond better. That's part of what makes this boot so freaking, this is not an exaggeration, this is as far as I can bend the boot. And that's because you've got 2 layers of that really thick veg tan leather. But that's part of what makes these boots so loved, is they're super rigid, they're super heavy duty. But for a wide toe box barefoot boot, you might not want that. So it's something to consider how rigid these are. Compare that to the Texarados, and you've got a similar setup where you've got a thick veg tan midsole, so you get all the durability, you get some of that rigidity, but it's not nearly as rigid. See how much easier that is to bend? But more importantly, this has a 6 millimeter slab of comfortable foam right underneath that veg tan midsole, compared to the hard rubber in the Nicks. And so that makes it a little bit more flexible, but it makes it significantly more comfortable and absorbs a lot more shock underneath your foot. When you're walking around these, you can feel the difference, but at the same time, it's not as durable, because this foam is pretty soft. It's a 60 Shore A, compared to like the 100 Shore A rubber. So now that we've seen all that, what about how do we rank these from like casual to heavy work? You know, what is this boot actually used for? For this, let's look at the outsole, because the Nicks has a really cool outsole. I really like this Vibram Kletterlift outsole. You know, it's like a flat hiking sole. It's pretty hard at a 75 Shore A. That's what you see in like heavy duty work boots to get the most durability possible. Compare that to the Texarado. This is a little bit softer. It comes about 65 Shore A, but it's not nearly as luggy either. And so it's a little bit softer, but because it has bigger lugs, I wouldn't be as concerned about it wearing out faster. The difference in sparseness of the lugs here compared to the softness of this, they're probably gonna wear at the same rate. And so I don't think one's that much better than the other. We also ran the puncture test on these. The Nicks took 362 pounds to puncture through, whereas the Texarados took 242. And so ranking these on that scale, or 1 to 10 of heavy duty work, I would say the Nicks are a little bit heavier duty than the Texarado, but barely. You know, it's maybe 1 point difference between the two. But we haven't seen what's inside. We don't know why this one is so much more flexible, even though they look almost the same from the outside. We don't know how it's structured on the inside, what they use for counter materials, and where that price difference is in a $500 boot compared to a $400 boot. So now, let's cut them in half. Okay, we got it cut in half, and this is not a cheap video. You know, we're trying to make these videos more interesting and more concise, so you can get all the information you need, but it literally doubles the price of the videos when we do 2 boots in 1. So if you don't mind supporting us, give us a like, give us a sub. So thank you guys for your support. Now, let's see what's inside the Nicks. And the Texarados. So almost identical on the inside, just a couple differences in thicknesses. As you can see with the Nicks, you've got that 5 to 6 millimeter veg tan insole, whereas on the Texarados, you got that removable insole, but then you've got a 3 millimeter insole underneath. And so that's where you get the really hard stiffness of this, plus all the nails they use to tack all that together. It's very, even the half boot is very tough. Compared to the Texarado, it looks like they have nails as well, but it's just significantly more flexible. And I think that's mostly due to that half thickness insole. And you can also see that comfort difference I was talking about with that 5 or 6 millimeter foam layer that really adds a lot of squish to this boot. And as for the internal components, you know, the linings, we pretty well called it, but the counters is what surprised me. I thought for sure for $100 less, you wouldn't get a solid veg tan heel counter in the Texarados, but the heel counters are basically identical. But honestly, both of these are about as high quality as you can make a heritage or traditionally made boot. So now, how do we rank these? Nicks, I'd give durability this, comfort, width, casual to heavy, look, and finally value. Then the Texarados, here's your durability, comfort, width, casual to heavy, the look, and the value. So tallying these up, I'm gonna give the edge to Texarado. It's cheaper, it's more flexible, it's more comfortable, it's wider. It basically does everything you want in a wide toe box work boot or even a barefoot work boot, and does it better and for cheaper than the Nicks. The Nicks, don't get me wrong, it's not that this is a bad boot by any means, and it's not that I don't think it's that overpriced, because a big difference is it's made in the United States versus made in Mexico. And in terms of how these rank across the board, it's basically Texarado at the top, Nicks next, and then everything else we've already ranked. So can Nicks actually make a true barefoot boot, even though they usually make the exact opposite? Not truly, because the Texarado is a true barefoot boot. This is like a Pacific Northwest inspired barefoot boot. Can Texarado, after just 2 years, make the highest quality barefoot boots on the market? I think so. This is about, look at this thing. It's about as wide as it gets. It's built like a Pacific Northwest boot, while still being flexible, more affordable, all those things we talked about. So yes, surprisingly, after 2 years, they absolutely nailed it. Which of these is the better barefoot style boot? Clearly the Texarado. It's actually barefoot, where this is kind of barefoot. But Nicks doesn't necessarily promote it as a barefoot. It's a zero drop boot in their terms. And which one do you want? It goes down to exactly what we talked about. If you want more structure, more squishing of your toes, more support, heavier duty, more rigidity, you might go with the Nicks. If you want a little bit more of the comfort, but still being extremely beefy and over the top in every single way, more so than every other like barefoot boot out there, you might want to go with the Texarados. Is there any boots out there that can beat this boot? This is pretty impressive. I especially with it being true barefoot. This is about as true barefoot as it gets. So let me know what you think. Do you think the Nicks should have won? Who do you think makes a better boot than this? And like I mentioned, this is an expensive video to do. So if you don't mind supporting us, give us a like, a subscribe, check out our handmade leather goods, our collaborations. That's what makes all this possible, to dissect $1,000 worth of boots, just to show you guys exactly what you're buying with your hard-earned money and to hold these brands accountable. So thank you guys. See you.